I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Neta, I'm really glad we get to do this because we've talked already a bunch of times about what Parametrics does, what you do. It's
Yeah.
super exciting. It's insurance for downtime events in the cloud, which is a genius idea. Everybody needs it. We're so reliant on everything happening in the cloud. We're recording this through the cloud. So, and I haven't
True.
insured this. So if it doesn't work, I don't know what's going to happen. But we forget how invasive or explicit the cloud is across our life. And you're the first company to insure it. So I'm really excited that we get to have this conversation. Thanks for joining me today, Neta.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So tell me first off, who came up with this idea? You're from California, but you're working in Israel. You went to school there. You were in the military there. So you got this bi-continent thing going on. Did you come up with the idea? I know you've got a team of co-founders. Where did this start from?
So, as with any startup, I think it's the co-founders. There really wasn't a single starting point. I think every founder had something to say and something to add, and together we've really pursued the idea behind Parametrics.
And how many conversations was that? Was that somebody had a great idea one day, or was it we're actively looking for that startup, but we don't know what it is, and we stumbled upon insurance? Or was there somebody that came, racing, like, we got to do insurance from day one?
So definitely a long process. It's not a single aha moment. I think we're very calculated in how we entered both the industry and both the idea that we have within the industry. Insurance for us was something that we worked on. So we don't come from the insurance industry, but it was an industry that was on the rise of innovation, of investments, of really a lot of cool ideas that were starting to pop up. And we identified a lot of areas that were still missing innovation. And so we stumbled about the insurance industry. We have a few failed ideas in the insurance industry, and maybe that's a topic for another day.
Wait, like what? No, like what are some failed ideas? I'm curious about that. Because I was going to ask you, did you guys play with a bunch of different ideas? Because I'm sure we know with startups, it's hard to just say the first idea I had is the best one. It takes some time to try out. So I am curious, what were some of the failed ideas? What did you learn from them? And then how did that help you pivot to where you are now?
Yeah, so we were looking at a few different things. I remember one of them was travel insurance. We were looking at kind of the pain of travel insurance and getting travel insurance. There wasn't much to innovate there. At least after we dug in a little bit, we noticed that it wasn't as big of a pain point as we originally had thought it to be. Another thing that we kind of stumbled around was insurance for consumer smaller items, things of value as a standalone insurance. There again, we realized it wasn't the biggest need like we originally thought it may be. But then we stuck to, I guess then we actually backed up and we looked at our own pain points, because the first couple of solutions we kind of jumped in, not really thinking directly about the pain points and thinking more around a cool idea, what a cool idea it would be, cool travel insurance or cool insurance for things. And then we looked at our pain points and the companies that we had either worked at before or founded, because my other co-founders are actually second-time entrepreneurs and have founded companies before. And they experience downtime in many forms. I experienced downtime working at my previous companies in many, many forms, and it's always been a pain point no matter what form it came in. And so I think once we stuck to our own pain points and what we actually knew was for sure a pain point, we were able to nail down downtime insurance. And that's really kind of how it started. It's definitely gone through a lot of refinements for sure, but the idea itself started just from trial and error.
I like that. In a way, The other things, you can't charge enough premium if you think about it, right? Travel insurance, the premium's not that huge. The
Yeah.
different products that people buy, they're not that huge because the travel itself and the products, the value of those things isn't that high. But you, in
Right.
a way, stumbled on something that's really expensive. Think about how millions of dollars every minute, every hour, billions a day, trillions a day, that people rely on the cloud for. So all of a
Right.
sudden, it's like, well, if you're relying this much on it, like I should be able to charge you a pretty hefty premium here.
Yeah, definitely. If you're looking at purely the business model, then absolutely, this type of insurance has higher premiums than I think anything else we were looking at. Not that that was the reason that we ended up
Right. It's just
going,
like a good side effect. It's a good
it's
side effect
definitely
of
a good
picking.
side effect
Yeah.
for sure. But I think it's more the idea of not being consumer insurance and being more focused around the business that gets you those larger premiums.
And that's a big shift because a lot of the ideas that you mentioned, they were all B2C ideas, and now
Right.
you're 100% B2B. Your customers are only big
Only,
companies. Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
What was the pushback though? Because insurance is a tough industry to crack. It's a tough industry to change, to bring innovation. It's highly regulated. Look, just in America, every 50 state, all 50 states have their own regulations, let
Yeah.
alone you're looking at other countries. So what was the feedback when you first started presenting this idea to people? Was there just a lot of, thumbs down, like, hey, sounds great, but I don't want to get involved as an investor or a customer or reinsurer or broker or partner? A lot of people you have to deal with. I'm wondering if there was a lot of hesitancy to get going because they knew it's just a challenging industry to crack.
So you mentioned a lot of players there, and the feedback does change between each one of those players. So the feedback between customers and brokers and insurers for each one is quite different. But insurance in general is definitely a highly regulated space, and so just gaining that knowledge of how the regulation of insurance works was something that we ourselves needed to learn, and also to surround ourselves with some very smart people that know this regulation well. So that was one of the first steps that we did. And then also, apart from being a highly regulated space, this is a space that plays with risk, and any space that plays with risk has a lot of complication and diversity, and it's very interesting. But if you want to innovate in that space, you first have to understand it. And so again, just diving into the insurance industry, both from a regulation perspective and also from risk management, was something that we taught ourselves, surrounded ourselves with a lot of very smart people that are experts in this field. And that was really what allowed us to penetrate the space with the innovation without harming all the other areas, and kind of disregarding the other very important aspects that this industry has.
Was there ever a moment with this idea that you guys all thought, maybe we need to pivot again? Maybe this is too hard. Maybe we're getting too many no's and not enough yeses. Did you ever face that real deep struggle on this particular idea?
No, and the reason for that is not because there aren't ups and downs and complications along the way, but the reason for that is because that happens with every startup that you have, and with every idea, and it really, regardless of the industry, you're going to face hurdles, and it's just a matter of being entrepreneurs and overcoming those hurdles. And I think one of the good things that we had working for us was that 3 out of the 4 founders, which is all 3 except for me, are second time founders. And so they've experienced these types of hurdles before, and aren't afraid to face them head first.
What is that like for you being the one person who's the founder, but not a veteran founder? You're the only rookie co-founder in this group. Is there a
Right,
lot
right.
of, hey, rookie, this is how we do things, and you're going to learn from us? Are they open to hearing your ideas, or is it a little bit of a one-way street in that department?
No, they're definitely open to hearing my ideas. I think I've definitely closed some of that gap for sure by just reading, and investing a lot of time by learning from others. And I'm definitely up to speed at this point.
What is the main lesson you've learned from them in terms of their experience, their mistakes, their failures the first time around? What have they brought to the table that has changed, opened your eyes a little bit?
So one of them is really, really what you mentioned before, which is, any startup is going to have hurdles. Any startup, if you're innovating in a space, you're bringing something new. If it was easy to do, it would have existed a long time ago. There's a reason why innovation, is not something that happens every day and every second, is why every startup doesn't succeed. So really, having that ability to overcome these hurdles in an efficient manner is something that I've definitely learned from my founders.
This is not cyber insurance, right? Like this is not part of anything that someone could already buy through a cyber insurance policy. Is that right?
That is right. This is a new insurance product in the insurance industry.
So how does the sales process go when someone says, "Hey, we got cyber"? This sounds to me like cyber, because my guess is when you're trying to sell something new, people are trying to connect it in their brains to something that they already know, and they may get confused. They may think, "Well, this sounds like a computer-ish, cyber-ish type of thing, because if someone hacks something, it'll go down. Aren't I already covered?" My guess is you've had these conversations.
Yeah, we've definitely had these conversations. I think any type of tech insurance may sometimes be grouped together, and some customers may potentially think they're covered for things that they're not, because tech insurance or it can sometimes group many things together. But we are not cyber insurance. So cyber insurance is more for ransomware or getting hacked, or the damages from having a cyber attack, where our coverage is more the service that you're so reliant on. That could be cloud services or content delivery networks or ISPs or payment systems. That service that a company is so reliant on went down, and they have nothing that they can do about it, because it's a third party service, but they can't run their business at the moment. So that is the differentiation between the two. Both are tech related, but the tech world is so big. You can have 10 different types of insurance just around technology.
Right, right. So cyber insurance is more like if I got hacked, if I had a ransomware, I had a data breach, something that happened to me as a company, but this is a company that I'm dependent on, my cloud provider. Let's say we don't know why the outage is. Maybe it's that they got hacked. Maybe they just had a
Right.
power outage. Maybe someone unplugged a server. But for whatever reason, it's just not working in terms of my experience as a customer. So you're going to pay me because the company that I depended on, they had the problem on their end, even though I don't
Right.
know why it happened.
You're essentially insuring your dependencies, and you're
Right.
transferring this risk that you actually have nothing to do about. You're transferring this risk over into an insurance product. With cyber, generally in most cases, you have something to do about it. So you can get better security. You still need cyber insurance, but you generally in most cases have something to do about it. In our case, this is really full dependency on a different service, that if they go down, you're helpless for while it's down.
We all know, think about everyone when it's, oh, Slack's not working, Gmail's
Yeah.
not working, or AWS is down, and then a million companies aren't working. So I know Parametrics covers AWS, Microsoft Azure, and the Google Cloud. Or is it just those three right now, or are there other cloud providers that you're focused on?
It's just those three. We have CDN coming out as well, which is a new product. So content delivery networks, that's how your resources on your website or on your platform get transferred worldwide. And we have the top four that are being insured there. So you have Cloudflare, Fastly, Akamai, and CloudFront in those products.
So that'll be a whole new product, a whole new pricing mechanism, a whole new way of doing things. What, by the way, what is
Mhm.
the typical pricing that you're charging right now? Like what premium for what amount of coverage?
Yeah, so this is a tough question, just because the risk changes so drastically between different businesses. It all depends on how your infrastructure is built out, and there are some cloud providers that are more dependent than others, or that are more prone to downtime than others. But essentially, It depends on also the size of the business and the coverage per hour, but essentially it can range anywhere between $5 to $500,000 for an annual premium.
What is the preference for companies? Would you rather have your cloud provider have a lot of little outages or one big outage, but it's infrequent? You know what I mean? It's sort of like rainstorms versus earthquakes. So which one ends up being more problematic if you're a company?
I think you don't want either of them.
But if you had to pick, if you had to pick, I guess let me put it this way. My guess is different companies, they prioritize things in a different way that maybe some say, we would rather have one big outage, but the rest of the time it's perfectly smooth. Whereas other companies say, we can't ever have a really big outage, but we're okay if it's down for a few minutes here and there, just depending on the nature of their work, if they're e-commerce versus something else that maybe requires a little bit more serious security and reliability. And my guess is there are some engineering trade-offs. And even at these cloud providers, my guess is there's some engineering trade-offs. Hey, this system we've decided will work all the time, but if it doesn't work, it'll really not work, versus this system will mess up a lot, but you might not notice it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, definitely. So that really depends on the type of business that you're running. And it also depends on what day or time this outage happened, right? It might be a very short downtime, but on a very relevant day for your business, or it might be a very long downtime. Another thing to look at is also the aggregation. How much downtime did you have throughout the year? It could be a bunch of small ones or one very large one, but in general, it matters how much you had also at the very end of the year. So there's not one straightforward answer because it depends on different businesses. What I think is very unique for our product is that we can accommodate for either. So the way that our coverage is structured, we can structure it in a way that you're compensated for a lot of very small downtimes, or it could be that you're compensated for one very long downtime, either on a day that is relevant or on any other day. So not a straightforward answer, but definitely both affect businesses a lot.
How many actuaries have you hired to work there? Because my guess is there are so many equations, so much math. The reliability keeps changing. There's different kinds of customers. You're adding on the CDNs. You must have an army of actuaries, right?
We have, I'd say, relative to the size of the company, we have an army of actuaries. So we do have a very good team of actuaries. Lots of experience. This is one of the things that we did very early on, and we continue to do, is hire amazing people from the insurance industry that will help close that gap of knowledge that we had initially coming into the industry.
What was it like selling the first policy? Because you don't know if your pricing is on target. You have no idea because it's so new. Well, our prices could be too low. We'll get so many claims and we're going to be out of business. Or
right.
If our prices are too high, that's okay, because then we'll make money and then we just bring it down, next time for renewal, and we can be competitive. But was that just very nerve-wracking, that first policy? Like, let's see what happens.
So I don't think it was nerve-wracking. It was very, very calculated. We have a lot of data that our pricing is based off of. So we actually monitor the services that we provide coverage for. So for example, we've built a monitoring system that monitors the cloud in its entirety. So we're set up in all the data centers that the cloud has, and we're monitoring all the services that the cloud provides. And that system alone is collecting over 675 million data points just a week. And so there's a lot of data that the models are based off of. So we weren't too worried. Definitely, it was relieving, I think, when we had our first payouts, that we were able to validate that, the models do make sense and the pricing did make sense for the long term.
How do you monitor everything? Are you getting access from these companies? Because you mentioned you're monitoring all the data centers, but how do you know all their data centers? Is that public information? If they add another one, because they're constantly growing. So if they add more, you must have to put some software in there or hardware. You have a guy looking inside what's going on. How do you actually make sure that you're monitoring everything? Do you have contracts with these cloud providers? How does this work?
So we're sitting on top of them. We're actively using them and making sure that they're working as if a customer was using them. So if there is a new data center that pops up, we immediately know about it because we continuously scan for new data centers. So if a new one comes up, we immediately notice it and we set up our software in that data center so we get data from that data center as well. So in general, it's all automated. We don't need to have contracts with them because we're just using the software as any other typical customer would, except we're using it at a very, very high frequency and collecting a lot of data at the same time.
It reminds me, there was in the stock market, there were these high frequency traders. It's almost like your high frequency insurance. You're working in the back end really quietly. Tell me about the word parametrics, because my understanding when I hear parametric insurance with a C was the idea almost like an options contract. It was used in natural disasters. If there's a hurricane's a good example. If there's a hurricane or a windstorm, we know from public records, hey, in this zip code, the winds reached 100 miles an hour. So we will automatically write you a check. You don't have to file a claim. We're not even going to look at your house, whether it got damaged or not. It just triggered this number. So you automatically get a payoff, that option market type of trading. That's what I understand parametric with a C to be. Your parametrics with an X.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence, right? So what's going on here?
It's definitely not a coincidence. And, who knows, maybe we would have been parametric with a C if that domain was available. But I'm kidding. But yes, it's definitely based off of parametric insurance. We are parametric in our payout. So the way that parametric insurance works is just like you mentioned it. There exists an event that you basically name the insurance off of. And if that event comes to fruition, then the payout that is pre-agreed with the customer is transferred to them. So essentially, there isn't this claim process or investigation because we're monitoring this risk. We know exactly when the cloud or any service that a business relies on goes down. And we've already pre-agreed on the payout that the customer is going to be getting. So essentially, we've eliminated all of that long process that just takes time to investigate what actually happened and what the losses were. Everything is pre-agreed and done in real time. So that's the way that we've structured it. And we're actually the first parametric insurance product in the tech in tech insurance. Really, like you mentioned, most parametric insurances are for weather related catastrophic events. And so we've been able to use this model, which has had a lot of success in the insurance industry, over into tech insurance.
When you were starting out this company, how nervous were you about sharing the idea with potential partners, investors, brokers, customers, because you didn't want someone else to copy it? Because it is a good idea. I don't think you have competitors yet, but I can only imagine there's so many copycat startups out there. They look at you and say, hey, they're doing it. We can hire a bunch of actuaries. We can spend a couple of years coding some stuff up. How sensitive do you have to be about, well, we want to get out there, but we don't want to give away too much too early?
Right. So this again is where I refer to my wonderful co-founders, and I think one thing that I've definitely taken from them is that a startup is all about execution. There's almost, of course, you have to have a good idea, but it's all about the execution of the idea. I mean, think about how many great ideas are out there that people just aren't executing at the moment. So we weren't too worried about not sharing. If anything, we wanted to share because we wanted to get feedback of customers. We wanted to make sure that the need and the demand was there from the beginning. So sharing was actually very important for us, and we just knew that we had to execute, and we had to execute fast. And at this point, we've gathered data for over 2.5 years that no other company in the world has. And so, I think we're very confident both in our technology and our models, and that we've really created that gap and that hurdle that is very hard to copy. And it's not the idea, it's the execution of the idea.
Where do you find your biggest challenge right now? Is it raising investor funds? Is it bringing on more customers? Is it explaining this to the media and journalists? There's so many different avenues that as a startup you have to explore. Where do you find is right now your biggest obstacle?
So I think the biggest obstacle for us is just because is the market is so huge in our case. We're licensed in the U.S. We're licensed in many countries in Europe as well now, which is new. We're operating in Japan. We're operating in Israel, but still, even with such large territories, we're still not covering all the areas where demand is coming from. We're getting demand from South America, where we're not licensed yet. So we definitely have a challenge of how do we scale fast enough into essentially all countries worldwide. And one of the things that we're working on is kind of these white label partnerships in areas where we aren't licensed yet, or don't want to operate in the near future, and have these partnerships with insurers, essentially, where they can use our technology and offer this type of coverage with their existing licenses in their territories.
And I'll ask you a question that we've talked about before off air. I'm sure it comes up a lot. It's a tricky one. I'm sure everyone asks you, well, whose cloud is better? Because you said some are more prone to downtime than others. And I'm sure all of your customers are like, well, wait a minute. Well, which one is it? Because that might have changed our decision as a business, and maybe their premiums are higher. So I know we've talked about this. It's a tricky thing to share publicly. The details, but what do you tell customers who want to know this information, because it does affect how much they're spending?
Right. So this really changes per how they've set up their infrastructure. So there isn't one straightforward answer. Every region has a different, and when I say region, I mean a data center or a group of data centers that are physically located in different territories around the world. And each one has a different amount of downtime. And so each one has a different risk associated with it. You can have redundancy between regions, meaning that if one region goes down, all risk is transferred over to a second region, and then that also changes your risk. And so there really isn't one straightforward answer. What we do, though, is when we're on a call with a customer, we will essentially evaluate their risk. And if they're interested, which a lot of times they are, we can recommend regions that we see are less prone to downtime, or having setting up their infrastructure with redundancy and how to do that. So we're there also from a technical perspective, but the risk changes from cloud to cloud, and from region to region, and from infrastructure to infrastructure.
What is the reason why cloud regions, data centers, why do they go down anyway? What is typically the reason at the cloud provider's point of view that they would have a downtime incident?
Yeah, so it's actually most cases are human error. So most cases
That was
are
going to be my guess. I was going to say, is it just somebody hit
really,
the
that's
wrong
actually not.
button and it stopped working? Like, you're laughing.
Yeah. So you'd be surprised. A lot of people actually don't necessarily think that's the main driver for downtime. It essentially can be anything, right? It can be weather related, electricity related. It can be network related. It can be anything. And most people, I think, don't think that the main driver, is actually human related. So it could be a bad release. It could be a bad setup of traffic allocation. Most cases of downtime are actually due to just a bug in the cloud provider's system.
That's something else. So then you wonder, at some point, will there be liability for those cloud providers? I mean, obviously the customers are getting insurance from you, but at some point you wonder, will this business evolve? And they'll say, well, I want to get my money from Amazon or from Google or from Microsoft. I'm going to sue them or put something in my contract. I'm sure that's a conversation that you're seeing or you're a part of right now.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what we're seeing, and this is a trend that we've seen pick up a lot over the years, is that people are not as patient with downtime, or degradation, or latency issues as they were in previous years. Today, there's an expectation that services will be up and running 24/7, around the clock, and the reason for that is because the technology exists in order to create that seamless experience, and to essentially um, almost always avoid downtime. Downtime is inevitable, but you can definitely get close. And if you do have downtime, you can essentially try and get up as fast as possible if you have the infrastructure in place. And so we're seeing that when downtime happens, because it does, when downtime happens, users are angry. Where they used to be more understanding, today they're angry. They are paying for a service that they think should be up all the time, and they're not getting that service. So we're seeing that shift over the last couple of years, where things need to be up, and if they're not up, there definitely needs to be repercussions or compensation associated with that.
Bring out the pitchforks. People are angry.
Yeah.
The cloud doesn't work. You have an angry world out there. I think about 20 years ago, iPhones didn't even exist. They came out like 2007, I think, right? And when they first came out, we were so excited, and now we're so dependent on them. Like, if they don't work, I'm going to kill somebody. So
right. Yeah, it used to be okay to just wait for a page to load. It used to be
right.
We were more patient as a society.
Right. Society's gotten less patient. It's good for your business. I wouldn't want to be one of these cloud providers. Too much pressure. Neta, it's a fascinating conversation. I appreciate the time today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.